Why do we like the backrooms so much? I think it's safe to say that we have a special intrigue in the backrooms or with liminal spaces as a horror genre. But what's so special about them? Recently, I saw the Backrooms movie and the theater was packed, which is something I haven't seen in a long time. It also turned out to be A24's highest grossing movie, which is really saying something when you consider all of the great movies that the production company has released in the past years. When you look at it, Backrooms Media isn't much to write home about. These are quite literally pictures and videos of rooms that contain little to no furniture and have weird 80s and 90s esque wallpaper. It honestly looks like it could have been an empty room in your grandma's house or the waiting room at a doctor's office. But as it turns out, that's part of the appeal of the backrooms. A reason why people are so interested in the backrooms is because of this eerie sense of nostalgia we experience towards liminal spaces. A feeling that we've been there before, or maybe have visited this place in a dream. We scratch our heads and swear up and down that, no, really, we've been there before. But where have we been? Are we sure? Where even is there? It's certainly something to talk about, the experience of feeling like we could seamlessly be transported into the back rooms because it's so familiar to us. But why does that create a sense of dread when, for all intents and purposes, this feeling of nostalgia should create comfort? The Backrooms had its origin on 4chan. A photo posted in 2019 of what looked to be part of an abandoned warehouse or something along those lines was posted with the caption, "If you're not careful and you no clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." A big part of why the idea of the backrooms became so popular was this mystery surrounding the origin of the photo. Again, that weird feeling of nostalgia came to surface for a lot of online users, and from there, the idea of the backrooms took on a life of its own, with lore being developed that was as expansive and ever changing as the backrooms themselves. The idea of being stuck on a labyrinth of never ending pissy yellow had its own terrifying appeal, too. As we know now, the photo was actually of an empty former furniture store. The photos were originally posted online of someone documenting a renovation project, turning this once furniture store to a remote racing car track all the way back in 2002. It's interesting to note that the 4chan post introducing the backrooms, however, was made in 2019. The idea of liminal spaces in horror is nothing new, but what introduced the backrooms as a refreshing face in liminal space horror was this sense of nostalgia that seemed to bring forth weird feelings. Now, what was also happening during this time? The COVID-19 pandemic. If you were online at all during the pandemic, you probably remember it as a weird time in internet history. It was a rare moment where humanity was experiencing the same things. Not only the fear of a seemingly unstoppable disease, but the dismantlement of in person work environments and communal spaces. Online communities were the only place where people could gather and grieve and remember a better time. The idea of nostalgia took on a physical form. It introduced itself on our feeds and made us, for the moment, happier as we huddled together in our houses and hoped for better outcomes. We experience this nostalgia, of course, with an undercurrent of fear. Fear for our loved ones, for ourselves, and humanity as we all weathered and still continue to weather the devastation that COVID-19 has brought. And like all times of mass suffering, humanity looks for ways to persevere through art, music, entertainment, and all things that make us human. The horror genre, especially, is so unique in that it can be used as a device to process trauma. We see this often happening with horror movies surrounding grief, such as an Undertone and Midsummer, not to mention how horror is a common way to explore the darker inner psyche of the mind, like in the backrooms itself. Horror is a safe way to explore such phenomena because, and I believe, it takes scary ideas such as losing loved ones or yourself to trauma and puts this control back into the viewer, which, in a way, is exactly what the idea of the backrooms did during this pandemic. Jack Lasky, in his article Liminal Space, makes the argument that the backrooms subsequently gained even more attention during the COVID 19 pandemic. After people around the world were forced into lockdowns as part of an early effort to combat the spread of the disease, images of once crowded city streets and other public spaces suddenly transformed into veritable ghost towns with everyone stuck inside their homes, further fueling interest in the liminal space aesthetic. It seems like no coincidence that the popularity of liminal spaces surged under lockdown. You opened up TikTok and there were images and videos of liminal spaces backed with creepy music that were, interestingly enough, almost always distorted from their original versions. It really does seem that the backrooms terror we feel stems from humanity facing an extremely uncertain time in our history. That these feelings of unease all go back to the same source, the anxiety and fear around a global pandemic, and the fact that it's persisted past the initial emergence of the pandemic serves as a reminder that illness or even the next pandemic is always around the corner. People often made allusions to The Walking Dead or other apocalyptic movies and TV shows. Empty city streets were widely documented, and the collective shock of seeing these once populated areas caused a surge of fear in anyone who saw them. These photos captured a vast emptiness with no one in sight, something that causes a lot of backrooms photos to induce such fear. The idea that the world you knew is gone and you are the only one left alive. Jack Lasky, in his article on liminal spaces, states that one of the features of liminal spaces, in addition to experiencing a sense of nostalgia, is that liminal spaces are transitional in nature. A liminal space is considered transitory in the sense that its purpose is to take a person from one place to another, rather than being a place where one would normally stay for an extended period of time. Corridors and alleyways are common examples of liminal spaces. Such spaces often seem eerie when they are empty. This particular sense of eeriness often arises when a space is observed outside of its designed context. For example, images of an empty waiting room may be somewhat off putting simply because it would usually be filled with people. Without the people, an empty waiting room looks and feels somehow off and a bit strange. This is in part because the emptiness allows the observer's imagination to fill in the blank in some way. This ultimately leads back to a psychological phenomenon which researchers call the doorway effect. The doorway effect is essentially the brain forgetting older information in an attempt to get ready to take in new information. This occurs frequently when walking through doorways, these transitional spaces. A common example of this is walking into a room and going, wait, why did I come in here again? That's the doorway effect in play. University of Notre Dame psychology professor Gabriel Radvansky suggests that passing through doorways is the cause of these memory lapses. Entering or exiting through a doorway serves as an event boundary in the mind, which separates episodes of activity and files them away. Recalling the decision or activity that was made in a different room is difficult because it has been compartmentalized. The backrooms are often rooted firmly in transitional spaces. This is a little personal tangent, but as someone who has a really hard time coming to terms with change, the transition from comfort to the unknown is always the worst part of the experience. I think that may be why I find the backrooms so terrifying. Not necessarily because of the specific content of liminal space media, but because these places, which, in my mind, are supposed to be places populated with people and safe, feel hostile and unforgiving. An empty hotel hallway or a monotone yellow, seemingly unending corridor of doorway after doorway triggers that fear of the unknown, similar to how most people fear the dark or a murky lake. Meredith Banaszak writes in the article From Horror to Healing, The Neuroscience of Liminal Spaces, The backrooms push our tolerance for uncertainty to the point of terror. They are designed to be destabilizing. The spaces literally start morphing and blending together just like our memories do. While our time occupying threshold spaces like doorways last merely an instant, in the backrooms, liminality is stretched to an uncertain or even seemingly infinite duration. With doors in front of you, corridors intersecting behind you, and the opportunity for jump scares for every direction, we are constantly on alert. We cannot turn our attention inward and let the mind wander. Part of the appeal of the backrooms lies in a sort of role playing aspect of imagining yourself in the back rooms and hopefully escaping. A lot of backrooms media pulls from this role playing aspect. There are countless backrooms video games in which you play as a person who has randomly stumbled or no clipped into the backrooms realm. You must escape to win the game. Even the backrooms movie plays upon this trope. The movie opens with a sequence shot in first person. We are essentially the character who has seen an unknown terror and needs to escape from the backrooms for survival. I think this appeal of a never ending transitional space is so terrifying because, in the end, it is the psychological implications of being stuck somewhere that scare us the most, or the fear of being stuck inside of our minds, unable to escape the darkest parts of ourselves. However, we enjoy the backrooms so much because we enjoy the safety that comes from horror. The adrenaline inducing situations of horror are only fun because in our minds, we know that we are truly safe. And we enjoy the backrooms so much because of its eerie setting. We know we are not there. Our brains receive the information that we are safe, and we can continue the enjoyment of unease that the backrooms gives us. We can imagine that we, too, would love to experience the backrooms for ourselves, just for a moment. One thing is clear about the backrooms. It is the psychological aspect we enjoy the most. Taking the time to wonder why these places look so alien, yet familiar to us at the same time. Like the fluid rules of backrooms lore, the fun part of the backrooms are the ever-changing questions we ask ourselves about why we enjoy liminal spaces so much. The journey is often the most enjoyable part. But mostly, and maybe most importantly, we simply like the backrooms because they're fun to look at and also, to me at least, aesthetically pleasing. For me, pictures of liminal spaces never get old. Doesn't matter how many videos or pictures of the backrooms I'll see, I'll always have a craving for more. Whether the backrooms represent our internal struggles or disrupt our memory processing systems, liminal spaces are, for the time, here to stay. And I'm all for it. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching my first video. I have lots of plans for this channel, and I hope you'll consider sticking around. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.